So I know a lot of people who would not want me to say the next words I'm about to say to you, but I'm going to say them anyway. I woke up this morning somewhere in the delicate space between anxiety and depression. And this is not an unusual thing for me. I never know when it's going to come. I've never taken medication for it, but I have been subject to bouts of anxiety and depression, depending on kind of the flavor, that they come in with, the energies they come in with. And oftentimes I can't ever connect it to an event in my life or a thought form in my life. It's like a visitor, a very unwelcome visitor that I've learned to befriend. And when that happens, I have been guilty of asking myself, what's the point? What's the point of any of this? What's the point of wanting to create a refuge and sanctuary for dreamers, for the inner child? What's the point in making art that brings a sense of hope and possibility so that we can tap our true potential instead of what we've been told that we have to live with or settle for? What's the point? What's the point in going through all that it takes to rise above the sloth, that thing. What's it? What it takes to get past the there are no easy answers. That's what I absolutely can share with you. There are painful feelings. There are painful realities. There's a gray zone that's deep and wide between the black of annihilation and the white of infinite possibility. That gray zone can last a really long time with no wind in sight. Just looks like fog. In fact, one of my favorite ways to envision this is from the movie Coraline, where Coraline is at the other mother's house and she wants to leave and she sets out to leave and she starts walking, and eventually her illustration of where she's living ceases to exist. So she walks out of color and she walks out of landscape into whiteness, like onto a blank page. And I love that because I feel like when depression comes or anxiety comes, there's this fog where it's not the world and yet it's not really a world that you're going to, it's not the next world that you're going to go investigate. It's a middle ground. Learning over all of these years to not take that sentence. You feel like you're sentenced to this gray space. To not take that as like a judgment, as a valuation on your personal worth. To not take it as to not take it personally. To treat it like Rumi says, as a guest, even if you didn't want that guest, even if that guest will violently, did you hear that? It was 3 Lilies. Violently sweep your house clean of its furniture. Still treat that guest honorably because he may be coming to clear you out for some new delight. So for me, it always goes back to trust. But that foggy space where life doesn't make sense and doesn't have order and doesn't have purpose or meaning the way you thought it did. And you might still come out the other side and see more meaning and more purpose, but right now you're in that gray zone or that white space, like Coraline. That can be very difficult. And I didn't come on today to share answers or solutions. I've never had a medication. I've talked to lots of people who choose to have medication, who have varying results, really good ones, really sad ones, and everything in the middle. And I just haven't taken that leap. And I'm not saying I wouldn't. I don't have a stigma against it. I just haven't felt the green light in my own self to do it. What I wanted to do was simply, after the last video I posted a few days ago when I was just questioning everything and I was having such a meltdown, I wanted to come on and just be with you in this very vulnerable space and say that this is, if you're sensitive, if you're a questioner, if you're an explorer, if you're a hoper, if you're a dreamer, if you're a possibilitarian, this is not an easy space to live in, and this is not an easy life. There are no quick answers. And I guess if you had a really good upbringing with really great grounding and you have that sense of place and family, it might be easier, right? You might have some tools when these things come and land in your lap. But if you weren't raised with those things and you were kind of parenting the adults in your life when you were young, and that's how you learn to get through the world, or you have another experience, whatever that experience is, and you survived your childhood more than thrived through your childhood, whatever that looks like, then when these white noise periods come, it can be very difficult to traverse your way. And I'm only here today to tell you that you're not alone, and also to draw strength from you, because I know that there are those of you out there who feel the same way and have the same issues and are struggling, and you too want to dance and play like I do. You too want to paint and collage and draw and express and sing and celebrate life. You too love flowers and sunrises and sunsets and the way the snow falls and twilight and the first glimpse of stars. You have all of this capacity inside of you to wonder and to marvel, and you want to live there. And then comes the white space, right? Then comes the gray fog, where you're not in the marvel and you're not completely out of the into the next creative zone. You're in between. And I am learning. I've been learning this for a long time now. So I'm in it's always this process of the spiral of one more layer and one more layer. I'm in that learning space of acceptance, of trust, of surrender. And I think especially as women, we need to talk about this, and we need to talk with each other, and we need to understand that this is a very, very real, trying part of our lives. And we need each other, and we need conversations, and we need truth, and we need togetherness, and we need to understand our belonging, so that as things fall apart, there is this kind of essential holding of the seams that comes from belonging and comes from togetherness. And I've had a big lack of that in my life, which gives me a big passion to create it. So this is part of that. This is part of creating that space, that we have a safe space to talk about these things, and to not judge, but just to be together, and also talk about how we deal with them, how we get through them. I tend to, when I can, I tend to put on things that are funny, that make me laugh, and that gives me a space. Or I'm with my dogs and I'll get with them, play with them on the floor and really get into it, or throw myself into nature. Like this morning when I woke up and I went and took a long walk with the mountains, and that super helped me just to be with nature. I sense in nature there are these beings that remember us. They know us. They know us. And they're remembering us back to ourselves every time we'll go be with them. So being in nature gives us back our own nature. So I wish that for you today and for myself. And I wish us the balm, the net that holds when things are falling apart, the net of kindred, of tribe, of togetherness, of the bravery to tell true, to speak true, even when it's not pretty. So I'll hold that space for you today and for myself.